Sounds like Cardinal Raymond Burke may soon get booted from his apartment in Rome at the Pope's behest. But is Burke the Pope's enemy? Here to help fill in the blanks and separate fact from fiction, Church Militant's Dr. William Mahoney. William, at first blush, this story comes off as a bit over the top. What's going on?
So La Bussola Quotidiana, the Daily Compass, an Italian outlet, said recently that apparently there are sources in the Vatican who say the Pope might be wants to get rid of Cardinal Burke's apartment and possibly his salary.
So that, I guess they broke the story, the Daily Compass broke the story yesterday. They're also claiming the Pope had some fanciful words at that meeting.
According to this, they're saying that the Pope said, I have it right here, exactly, the quote is, Cardinal Burke is my enemy, so I'm taking away his flat and salary. This is according to sources there, which they say other sources have confirmed, but that's...
Okay. Now, if the Pope actually did speak like that, it would seem quite self-referential. I mean, he doesn't say enemy of Christ or enemy of the church, says my enemy, to say the least. So we'll have to wait and see, you know, if that part of that statement or whatever ever gets denied or affirmed by the Vatican. May never respond to it. But what is so interesting to me is actually the use of the word enemy right there. It seems like the media loves to portray Burke as the enemy of Pope Francis all the way back 2014, and Burke keeps denying that claim. Can you help us out with that?
Yeah, this goes back to the Synod on the Family when Cardinal Burke was first saying, he wanted the Church to reaffirm her traditional teaching on divorce and remarriage and the reception of communion, and because of that, there were some cardinals and others in the hierarchy who started accusing him of being against Pope and being an enemy to Pope Francis and whatever they thought Pope Francis wanted to accomplish. And out of this, the media, of course, then jumped on it because they think that this is a good story when you have Cardinal versus Pope and Pope versus Cardinal. That's just a good story to push. So they jumped all over it, and ever since this word enemy has been floating around.
Yeah, you just always see it in the media, just enemy. The Burke is the enemy of the Pope, and now Pope Francis himself even denied that Burke was his enemy, at least in the past anyway. Can you help us out with that one?
Absolutely. I mean, he said in an article that was published by Crux in 2017, he said Cardinal Burke is not his enemy. I mean, he quite explicitly said he's not his enemy. So now he doesn't apparently, at least then he didn't seem to see him as an enemy.
Now, William, it seems like Burke has intervened many, many times in the past 10 years, never accusing really the Pope directly of heresy or of the Pope even harboring any evil intentions. But rather always addressing just the confusion and seeking clarity. Your thoughts?
In fact, that's exactly what he's done. We remember the dubia that he signed with 3 other cardinals on Amoris Laetitia asking for clarity. Then, he said that this church is like a ship without a rudder right now. So he's definitely intervened at different points during this, and it was in 2014. He was, that same year of the Synod on the Family, he was removed from the apostolic signatura, as the prefect for the apostolic signatura. So there's been some tension there, we can say, between Cardinal Burke and Pope Francis, but both of them mutually deny calling each other an enemy. Yeah,
but Burke keeps walking that title enemy back all the time. Even the Pope, like we say, walked that back in 2017. So this story has a way of maybe possibly being sensationalized. Many people, of course, very dear to Cardinal Burke, and rightly so. But if he was just booted from the, he's not excommunicated. He's not going to be no longer a cardinal or out of the conclave or anything like that. So I guess, Dr. Mahoney, you seem to be a relatively well-educated man in the Catholic faith and have much experience with scandal in the church. Even if the Pope made such a referential comment, just say, okay, maybe he had a bad day and he said that, or he meant it in some other way. Burke is my enemy, so I'm taking away his lodging and pay. Would that really affect how you personally practice your faith and what you need to do to get to heaven?
Me personally, absolutely not. And like you said, I mean, I was at the NAC for 2 years. I've been in Rome. I studied as a layperson in Rome, so I got a lot of wind of what was going on there back then too. So that was their total of 6 years in Rome and in the Eternal City. So sure, I've seen lots. We had a joke there that the reason there's so much faith in Rome is because so many Catholics who visit leave their faith there once they see what's going on. So I mean, there's really nothing new there. There's always going to be scandals, but that should not affect your faith. I mean, Jesus himself said that there will be scandals. Just woe to the one from who causes them. But that's always going to be there, and that should not affect your personal faith, of course. And we see lots of examples of this in the history of the church too. St. Jerome and St. Augustine didn't get along at first either. Augustine was saying to Jerome, like, why are you doing another translation of the Bible? And when we already have some in Latin, and Jerome basically told him, why don't you go away? The Pope told me to do it. And then Augustine, was very diplomatic, and he overcame that and they ended up becoming friendly. But there's always been tensions like this because there's human beings involved, and we all have a fallen nature, and there's always going to be tension. But this should not cause anyone to walk away from the faith, because your faith is not based on any one man except Jesus. So.
Now, a final question here, William, just came to me, this idea of impeccability. Do you think it's a form of clericalism when we put any pope on a pedestal and hold him to a higher standard of, he's sinless, he's impeccable, he can't be flawless, and all of that? Do you think Catholics at times do that or assume that when they're reading these scandalous articles, and that somehow they're more aligned to a person rather than the church and the Patrine office, which has seated how many 250 plus, 60 plus popes now?
Sure. I mean, definitely. I mean, the church was really clear to condemn Donatism, which was the idea that the priest had to be personally holy and free of the state of mortal sin to confect any of the sacraments. But of course, that's not true. And when we come to the papacy, that's not even a degree of holy orders. It's a prelature. So he's the overseer of the entire church, but it's not a degree of holy orders. His highest degree of holy orders is that he's a bishop. So this understanding that the Pope is somehow incapable of sinning or doesn't sin is silly, and it's not Catholic teaching. Just go read the history of some of the Borgia popes, and you'll see that quite clearly. Also, the Pope's not infallible every time he opens his mouth. That's another thing people seem to confuse. There are very, very specific rules and guidelines for when the Pope speaks infallibly. So he's not going around protected by the Holy Spirit every time, let's say, he says something on an airplane or at dinner, or if he actually said this thing about Cardinal Burke.
Yeah, well said. By way of closing, we can air similar concerns by Bishop Joseph Strickland about staying in the church, not being scandalized. The former bishop of Tyler, Texas, removed a few weeks ago from that diocese by the Pope. Just yesterday, he wrote, quote, "Do not ever leave the church. She is the bride of Christ. She is now undergoing her passion, and you must resolve to stand resolutely at the cross. It is important to attend Mass every Sunday and as often as possible, to spend time in adoration, to pray the rosary daily, to go to confession regularly, and to call upon the saints for assistance. I urge you to persevere, that you might say in the end, I have fought the good fight to the end. I have run the race to the finish. I have kept the faith." God bless Strickland for his sage advice. And William, thank you so much for all the background and your wise insights.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks again for watching today's episode of Rome Dispatch. This show is brought to you by donors like Real Estate for Life. If you're looking to buy or sell a home and want to support our mission, visit realestateforlife.org. Again, that's realestateforlife.org. Be sure to tell them Church Militant sent you. God bless.